welcome to this week's installment of Hi, I'm Doctor. And I think, Irene, you are the first non-dentist we're having
Man,
on the
give it
pod.
up. Give it up.
Yeah, let's
Stop
Love
go.
it.
it.
Just
Yeah.
stop the craziness.
So,
I
so
think you're the best first guest, though. Like the best
Yes.
yeah.
first non-dental or non-dentist
So
guest.
many people are
Sorry.
going to come at you in the DMs right now.
I
They're like,
know.
but what do
It's
you mean? I'm fabulous too. You're all
nope.
wonderful in your own way.
everyone's wonderful in their own
But
way.
not really.
But if you but if you don't know Irene, for the two of you that don't, Irene is huge on Instagram. I love your page. It's super positive, super fun. But what really makes you unique and what we want to talk a lot about is you actually own a practice. And like we talked about, you're not a dentist, but you have dentists working for you there. So
Yep.
it's a really cool conversation. So why don't you just take a couple seconds, introduce yourself, and then we can kind of get into it.
Yeah, well, in West Philadelphia, where I was raised, the
Born
playground
and
where I spent
raised.
most
Born
of
and
my
raised.
days. Yeah, chilling out, maxing, relaxing. So yes, I am Canadian-based practicing dental hygienist in the city of Toronto. I'm actually a restorative dental hygienist, which means that I can do everything except prep a tooth and restore an implant. That happened after I opened my own practice, which is now almost 3 years old. It'll be 3 years in August.
Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Thank you. Startup COVID baby. Not that wasn't originally the plan, obviously, but it just happened that way. So yeah, I get to do a lot of really interesting things, and the social media aspect of it kind of happened after the fact. I've been practicing for almost 17 years this year, and I've bopped around. I started in pedo, and then I went to perio, and then I worked in an ortho practice. I started lecturing for Invisalign. I worked for like a kind of bougie cosmetic practice in Yorkville. Holistic practice. Like I was just the nomad dental hygienist, picking up whatever I could, finding her home. I was like, the like lost puppy trying to find her perfect fit, and that kind of never really happened. So then I just created my own space where I get to do all of those things all in one place, and also be an employer, which is legit the hardest part of all of it. Like
Totally.
managing people is not what I expected to be difficult. I was like, oh yeah, great. Like I'm friendly. People like me. Like I'm
They
not
don't care about
mean.
you. No.
No. And somehow other people's problems become your problems.
Yeah.
And that has been the bane of my existence. That and my
Double click
HVAC
on that.
system.
Double click on that
Yeah.
because I think people don't understand the pain it is to be an employer.
It is stressful beyond belief. Like the chaos every morning. Do you either of you own a practice?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so
Necky does.
you know the pain when you wake up first thing in the morning and you roll over and you pick up your phone and there's a text message or like a message in a group chat
Yeah.
and there's just like some long-winded excuse as to why someone can't come into work, and your morning routine of like having a protein shake and riding your Peloton for 20 minutes is now like scrambling to log into the server to figure out what's happening. And it's just like this internal fire that is fueled within you as you furiously scramble your eggs to eat them really fast and get to the office an hour before everyone else to make sure the air conditioner's working. That's every day for a business owner. And I took advantage of so many past employers not knowing what they were going through. Like
Yeah.
yeah. Dr. Carol Waldman, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry.
It's so hard because I'm so lucky. I have a phenomenal practice manager, office manager. Her name is Patricia. Patricia, if you're listening, I'm sorry
Shouts.
for everything that I do to you to drive you nuts, because she's the one that takes those texts and I get the phone call at 8 a.m. saying, hey, your assistant's not coming in. And I'm just like, oh shit, here we go. But I feel your pain, and I feel no matter how hard you try to be so nice and so accommodating, I don't think maybe your employees or your other team members see that. And I find it very difficult to be an owner, and I don't think I'm a very good one, but it's very
That's
difficult.
not true.
I feel your pain, man. No, I can smile as much as I want, but they're just like, we need an answer. And I just smile bigger because I don't know the answers.
It's true. I just posted I did a lecture at Voices of Dentistry, which is a podcast conference in Arizona. And luckily I was given like the main stage kind of keynote where my lecture, can we swear in your podcast?
Go
What's the
for
rule
it.
here? Okay.
Let's
So
do
the
it.
title is Can Shitty Employees Make Great Leaders? And it was a 45-minute kind of TED talk about my experience in 3 years taking shitty employees and turning them into awesome leaders. And I posted that today on YouTube with my slides and stuff. And I've received a lot of feedback, like in such short period of time, where it's the autonomy that people want, but they don't understand, the decision making behind the scenes. And I think one of the best qualifications or best attributes of a leader is to acknowledge that you're actually not the best leader, because that means that you care enough and you're not arrogant.
Did you just call me the best leader?
Well, I called you not arrogant.
Akil, you heard it here. You heard it here.
You heard it
I'm the
here
best
first.
leader.
Yeah.
The self-deprecating leaders are always the best ones, hey?
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Irene, give us some of your horror stories.
Oh man, without sounding like a complete B word. Like I don't know why it just seems to be a thing where people just don't show up to interviews. And I know that's like not the worst thing that could happen, but people just like will schedule an interview and not show up for whatever reason, which is really frustrating. Like it shows how little you respect other human beings' time.
Yeah.
Like how much time would it literally take to pick up the phone and be like, hi, I've received another offer elsewhere, or I'm sorry, my cat's sick. Like give me your best excuse on why the mushrooms you had in your refrigerator made you sick. Like I would believe it over just not showing up for an episode, for an interview.
Yeah.
I've had like people come to work and then do drugs in the back and then try and steal through someone's purse. Yeah. And caught it on camera and it was terrible. And then she came to work
Holy
3
cow.
days later in her pajamas, like not realizing what she had done. It was just like, that happened.
Dang.
Yeah, a lot.
Are you
How
are
do
you
you
fam-
even
are you familiar with David Harris
David Harris?
of
No.
Prosperity
David Harris.
Dent?
Is
No.
that the fraudulent guy?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Anti-fraudulent guy.
Harris.
So he's a friend of mine, and I went to his. So we were just talking about the ODA conference right before we started. I only went to one talk, and it was his talk because it is so interesting. He puts on videos on the screen of them doing like interventions with staff, and it's like they'll do
No.
like cutaways and be like, I could tell he's lying because the way like this didn't line up with this, and I'm like, this is the most. It's like real life CSI, but like dentistry. It's awesome.
Oh my God.
If you ever get a chance to go to one of his talks, they are
Okay.
incredible.
How does
And
he
I
get
was
away
like-
with it?
Food Network shows where they like catch the cooks in the kitchen doing bad stuff, and oh man, that's what.
Yeah, it's hilarious. But the story you just mentioned, it's like he has hundreds of those stories. Like I had him on my old podcast, and he just told story after story after story, and it was
I
like
feel like an
mind-blowing.
employee would get wind of it and then they'd sue me. Like that's how bad my luck would be, is that someone would be like, I know that story. That was me.
Yeah,
Defamation of character suit
Oh,
or
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It's
Man,
brutal.
you gotta be so careful with what you say these days because you never know who's listening and how you can get in trouble. But I don't know, man. I feel even having this podcast, I feel like I've maybe said too much at certain times. Hey, Akil?
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
Our CDSO is listening with
Yeah.
one ear and
I'm in
looking at their
Alberta.
paperwork.
Don't
on
listen
the
to me.
other.
Yeah. Well, speaking of our CDSO, if we want to go there, you asked me earlier pre-recording and you mentioned it like in passing that like a dentist quote unquote works for me. So that's legally not allowed. So the RCDSO has pretty strict guidelines about partnerships with non-dentists, which is like kind of crazy because almost every DSO is owned by multiple non-dentists, but whatever, a podcast topic for another day of how they oil each other, grease each other, whatever they're doing in the back end. The agreement between a dental hygienist and a dentist is like a chair rental agreement with a fluctuating management fee and a TMI, kind of like taxes, maintenance, and insurance sort of thing. So the reality is a dentist can never work for me. Like they can't be my employee, or partner, business partner in any way. So fun fact, I had a quote unquote associate. Like what else do you call this person? Like chair rental dentist. So it's
Chair
like
rental dentist. Let's call them that.
chair rental dentist. Like nobody would know what that even means. So I still say associate because I'm associating myself with this other clinician. So my last associate, for the better part of a year, told me that he didn't want to open a practice. Like he was over the practice ownership part. He owned a practice in a different country, didn't want to deal with it. And then a year later, apparently I made it look so easy that he left and opened a practice. And now I have another dentist who's with me full time and she's wonderful. But now he's sending me text message. He's like, man, I should have listened to myself a year ago. Like, why did I do this? It's pretty rough. It's a very rough situation.
Irene, off the tip of my tongue, I'm dying to ask you, what is the dynamic? Because the traditional relationship is dentist owns practice, hires hygienists, and now it's flipped. Yes. And I think this is amazing. Like, way to go. You flip the script. And how is the dynamic?
So I've learned a lot over the last 3 years of the type of employer I didn't want to be. So I've worked for some kind of mean girls in the past, locked up in her castle, the corner office, playing solitaire on her computer and like not really interacting with the team. So I was that human when I first opened my practice. I had this beautiful office. I would sit there and watch tennis between patients and I had my own fancy computer and I did all of my computing and all of my important woman things in there. And then I realized, it was an extremely big waste of money because it potentially could have been another operatory that's generating revenue. And then also it was secluding me from the team members. I was kind of, in behind the gates where they had to knock and tiptoe on and knock on the door to ask me a question. And, you do the wave in sort of thing. So I realized it was kind of creating this weird vibe where even the dentists were doing that. They were like knocking on the glass, seeing me on a phone call and like pretending they're kind of like walking by oddly. So I got rid of the office. I turned our back kind of storage room area into this like little NASA workstation. We've got like mounted computers and like a tabletop bar height space where we all use computers and there's no like designated computer for someone. You kind of like, use the station and move around. And I eat lunch in the back with everybody else. I don't have my own space anymore, which is kind of weird, but also kind of cool. And that's changed the way that we communicate with one another a lot more. I don't do any social media when I'm at the office or very little of it. So that's all scheduled on shoot days, social media days. Like I'm not just like pulling out a camera in the middle of a procedure. And I have a social media manager and a personal assistant. So like they're handling all my stuff for me while I'm treating patients and I can focus my 3 days in the operatory and not have to deal with any of the emails and stuff that goes back and forth. Not that I don't love it, but it really takes a lot of your brain power out of that patient that's in the chair.
Totally.
So that took me a year to figure out. And it was probably one of the best decisions I made, aside from the profitability side of having a third op going, but it was just, people don't treat me like the boss.
Yeah.
They'll follow what I say, but they treat me like an employee.
Interesting. Hey, I got a question. Who owns the files? Like, is it a dent? Like, I thought that's where the regulation came in, is like, who owns the files? Yes.
Or the goodwill of the charts. Yeah. Yeah. So,
you read me.
Yeah, been there, done that. Because of course, when you sell a practice, you want to sell it not only with its goodwill and assets, you want to keep it together. Yeah. So there's an interesting agreement that a lawyer can draft, and I'm happy to share Howard's info with you, or Harold Fetter is my lawyer. It's called a custodian agreement. So the goodwill of the charts is owned by a corporation, and the corporation is headed by a clinician, and we are all under the goodwill of the charts by a custodian agreement. And that custodian agreement gets passed down from clinician to clinician, or dentist to dentist, or dentist to hygienist. So it's kind of an intricate loophole, I'd say.
I got it.
Yeah.
So I got a question about leadership, and I'm going to be very careful about how I phrase this not to get myself in trouble. So like you have kind of two hurdles to get over, because you mentioned people aren't taking you seriously. You have the hurdle of, dentists might not, being okay with that sort of dynamic. And then the other is, you're a female leader. What
Mm.
what sort of, because there's like, if you look at our classes now, like my class, I'm in third year of dental school, and our class is pretty much 50-50. The year behind me is probably 55-45, but the year behind them, so the first year dental students are like 60% women. So this is like a big kind of change in demographic within dentistry. So if you were to speak to, other women in positions such as yours, what advice would you give them?
I feel like I'm the worst person to give advice to other women because for the better part of my life, I doubted whether I could do this or not. Um, so it makes it easy for me because I don't have children. I don't have any responsibilities aside from my toy poodle, who is basically like my child. And
Oh,
there's
I
no
got a
like,
dog. I know how it is. I know
yeah,
how it is.
Luz, she's somehow camouflaged into my couch. So I think that makes things a little bit more difficult because being a mother and being a business owner are two full-time jobs and somehow you're trying to fit them into one. So I think if I could give one piece of advice is survey what the next 10 years of your life will look like, and come up with creative solutions in which you could become an owner, but perhaps have a partner if family life is in your future. If not, then just go for it and jump on in. If a dental hygienist that is an immigrant who didn't speak English until high school basically could do it, anyone can. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's just everyone's so different. It's hard to generalize, but just
Um,
do it. Female,
yeah.
male, non-binary, whatever. Just if you want to be a business owner, be a business owner. Someone will give you money.
What made you like take that step? Because you said you worked in almost every single aspect of dentistry except practice ownership, and then you jumped right in pre-COVID. Like what made you like think you can do it? Because you just said you didn't, like, you were too nervous, but how did you get the gumption to just do it?
I never really thought that I could be a great business owner. My
But why
mother
not?
had
But why
my,
not?
well, I looked at my parents, right? So we are a sum of all of our experiences,
Totally.
and ultimately you're a product of what you were raised in. And I was raised in this like super conservative, Eastern European, born and raised in a communist country type of vibe where you were either a doctor or a lawyer or a failure. So I was none of those three. So I was already a failure. Basically, I had nothing to lose in the eyes of my parents. So it's like, let's just try. And I looked at my mom, who was a successful business owner as an immigrant. She ran 4 spas in the city of Toronto and had a really cool business model. She set up these spas in condo buildings. So she worked closely with a company called Tridel, and she kind of like copy and pasted DSO spas in condo buildings.
That's
And I was
awesome.
like, my mom still can barely spell. Like, if you were to look at our text message interactions, you're like, I don't understand what language this is in. And if an immigrant is creative and smart enough and sassy and savvy enough to figure it out, her offspring must be able to. And I was like the teenage daughter that went to her spa and like did the accounting after school. Like that was me. So I had nothing to lose. I was in my 30s. I was disappointed in the practices that I worked in. People talked shit about me. People said I was a difficult employee. My boss used to throw stuff at us. Like I was in like crazy environments.
Oh
One
my
of my
goodness.
bosses like made us take him to a strip club and then stuck us with the bill. Like there was just a lot of stuff that
What?
happened in 10 years. Yeah. And and then I was like, I'm done. Like I can't do it anymore. And if mom can do it, then I definitely could do it. And then that happened. That all just kind of worked out. I learned how to write a business plan. YouTube is amazing. Like YouTube is the best place on earth to learn things really fast. Um, I got a loan from a bank. I learned how to save money like furiously. I started a startup. I sold scrub caps in order to save money for my personal injection, which had to be like over 100 grand. So I calculated backwards, like how many scrub caps do I have to sell to learn and to save $100,000? You learn that number really quickly when you have to. So that was just how it all happened. It was the fight and I had nothing to lose because
I
I
love that.
was at nothing at that point.
That's so wicked.
Yeah.
It's a sweet story. It's a sweet story. But like so like my day job is a dental student. My night job is, I work at Sage. I'm a partner at Sage, and we help people buy and sell practices. And one key thing when, you go to buy a practice or start a practice is, how do you acquire the financing? You sort of touched on it, but how does it work when it's, a hygienist applying for financing versus a dentist? Because I can imagine they're two very different things.
It's difficult. Well, you apply in the same place. So first I started with looking at BDC. I thought BDC perhaps would give me some funding, but unfortunately they didn't see my business plan as something that was viable. I went to
And their interest
Scotiabank.
rates are way higher than
Yeah, they're
a normal
higher,
bank,
but
too.
they say that it's a little bit easier to acquire. So first, I went that route and I was like, I think I could do a little bit better than this. So I went to Scotiabank where my parents had some relationships. And, they put you through that same section where chiropractors and physicians and dentists, like the medical healthcare, whatever group, and you present them with your business plan. They crunch their numbers, they send it to their analyst. Their analyst comes back with some robot voice. It's like, I cannot compute. And then they declined me. They're like, unfortunately, you'd have to put in like a significant personal injection for us to even be able to do this for you. So I went to RBC, same thing. I had this like kind of crotchety lady that didn't understand the business model. And because originally, I'm starting with an associate model right away. I'm not the main producer. I wasn't a restorative hygienist at the time, so I wasn't even having like that significantly high billing. So she said no. And then somehow within the next couple of weeks, my case got transferred over to a new person that took over her role. And he Googled me. Like he just typed my name into a Google search and realized that I was doing more with dental hygiene. I was speaking and traveling and podcasting and social media and all this stuff. And he then presented it to his analysts in kind of a different way. My space is also rented out for a CE. I run my social media company through it. So the space is rented out by Tooth Life Media. There's a lot of moving parts on the corporation side. And he secured me a loan, but still made me put in a significant personal injection of almost 15%, which is crazy because like you literally could come out of dental school tomorrow and be like, hey, bank, can 100%. I please have $1 million? Like I also have $500,000 of debt, but like, can I have $1 million, please? Because I'd like to open my own startup and like, I don't know, a 14A from a 12B, like that could happen. But for me, with someone with significant experience, they were very eager to say no. So it just took that one person to convince, and multiple revisions to the business model. Originally, I wanted it to be a one-op shop, like just me, myself, and Irene in my little space doing my thing. And then I wanted
that would have been
chairs.
Like the best name too.
I was just gonna say that would have been
wicked.
Yeah, and then that turned into like, well, I want Intego chairs, and I want Surak, and I want a mill and a print and all these things, and it's like cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. So that goes from 1 op to 4 ops very quickly.
Do you feel like the blessing behind all this was it was pre-COVID? Because if you went back and asked for that loan, now interest rates are even higher. The amount of money it would take to open up that practice with construction and equipment costs is up at least 25%. Like, would you do the same thing today?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a blessing in retrospect. Not only that, but also for new patients. So we average without marketing like 60 to 70 new patients a month easily.
Whoa.
Because of our, it is. It is crazy amount. And okay, I'll attribute some of it to social media. Like people follow me on Instagram, but most of the people that follow me on social media are dental people, which I have many patients that are dental patients, but the ones that I'm seeing are neighborhood people. I mean, my office is in the North Beaches. So it's a super small kind of tight-knit community, really young professionals with lots of kids. And they want to stick close to home. Like if I look at my medical history forms, I use Yappy, which is like a digital system. If I look at the reason why people are coming to the practice, one of them is live close by or have moved into the area or now working from home. So they want to walk to the dentist on their lunch break and then not go downtown where in the path, and I feel really sorry for the dental offices that are in the core, they just want to stick close to home. And you make them happy, they refer. And honestly, the Facebook groups, like the mom Facebook groups and the local community Facebook groups have been amazing. I'm not even part of them because I'm afraid. But as soon as one person says, I brought my 9-month-old to Tooth Life Studio, like 2 weeks later, I'm just like covered with 9 to 12-month-old kids. I don't know what to do with them all.
Huh.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Do you have someone to help you with running the office? Like, do you have an office manager?
I
Do you have
do.
people to
Yeah,
help run the
yeah.
show? Yeah.
Office manager, treatment coordinator, full-time receptionists, full-time doc, 2 hygiene, 2 assistants, 1 floater. So yeah, we run a pretty tight ship. I would consider us to be a relatively small team, but yeah, everyone's been really great. We're finally
How,
down to an all-female crew.
there
Ooh.
you go. There,
Mhm.
there you have it. How common is this? Like, I've never heard of this concept before.
It's not super common, but not extremely uncommon. I think I'm just kind of the most public one or the loudest one about it. Um, there are a few other dental hygienists that own practices. A friend of mine is a part owner in like multiple practices as a hygienist. Um, yeah, I think we kind of have like each have our own little pocket. Um, Many practice independently without a dentist or have like a really strong referral, local referral. Many practice in assisted living facilities or do remote or teledentistry, or, they have mobile units that they go to people's homes or facilities. But I think it's really expensive to have a brick and mortar dental space or dental practice. And the ones that I do know of, like either someone's family owns a building or they have a building that they're renting out to other disciplines, so they're able to subsidize their rent. You got to get creative if this is what you want to do. I got really lucky with my space because it was completely concrete and there was nothing in it. So when I was using my real estate agent, I used a commercial real estate agent to find my space. There was a couple of places I was looking for or looking at, and this one was just a concrete shell. It required a significant amount of pre-reno or leasehold improvements. It cost $200,000 to do core drilling in the concrete.
Oh God.
Yeah, luckily I
Really?
negotiated that really well with the landlord because it's on the main floor of a condo building. So it's like
Yeah.
street front, and there's like an 11-story condo building above me. But it's the structural floor. And yeah, it was 200K. We had to like have like fancy floor x-rays to figure out where the rebar was. We had to
Yeah.
redesign the space multiple times because I couldn't core drill to get my pipes and vac and stuff into the basement. We had to there was a small grade because I'm in the beaches. So we had to put in a reverse pump to pump back up to the highest point
Oh
of the
my
office.
goodness. Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that uncovered after we started construction, which was another reason why we were so delayed. So yeah, the landlord covered like probably 2 to 300K of the total, almost seven. Um, and I was lucky that that happened. But yeah, if I could do it all over again, I don't know if I would do it differently
Holy
because
cow.
we've been
200K.
profitable basically since day one, which is kind of crazy. Knock on wood,
Irene,
wherever the
like
wood may
you're
be.
such a good, like you strike me as such a good and true entrepreneur, which is, I see it in two ways. Like, oh, there's the dog. I see it in
I'll
two
keep it
ways, right?
down.
It's like, if you look at dentistry and dentists, like they're almost on the track to very easily become an entrepreneur, but it's very difficult for hygienists to become entrepreneurs and you don't see them, nearly as often. Are you doing something in the way of, advocating for entrepreneurship, like at large for hygienists? Because there's a lot of great businesses that can exist within hygiene.
Sure. I mean, advocacy in general on social media has been helpful, but I consult, so that I did do a lot of stuff for free at the beginning where I would say, sure, like let me share with you all of my spreadsheets and my business plan and the way that I did all of these things. And then I realized, A, I spent a lot of money to do that, but money is also time. So now I kind of have a flat fee. I'm like, I'll help you build a business. And I've done that for a few hygienists. Like, this is the cost. This is how long it's going to be. before you can open your doors if you stick with me. And I share, my contractors and my lawyers and the plumbers and the cabinet makers and the companies where I ordered my flooring from, like every little bit in piece. But it still comes down to money. Like the reality is a dental hygienist is still going to need to have a pocket full of cash before they could go to any bank and say, I want a cookie cutter Irene's business plan, because not everyone is going to be me. So how hard can I really advocate if maybe as a profession, not everyone is there yet?
And Irene, what about like, do people really want to own a practice? Because my next question for you is going to be practice owner to practice owner. When I first started when I bought my practice back in 2010, January 4th, 2010, I opened the door, massive flood. Worst day of my life. Still crying about it. I can still see the tears I can feel the tears running down my face as my multi-million-dollar investment is underwater. And it was underwater again last month because we had a big, it got warm out, all the water. Shit happens as a practice owner. Yep. Have you felt any of this? Like, have you had like the disaster,
my HVAC has been down for the last 3 weeks. Literally, I had a fire in my office last week because a space heater caught on fire.
Really?
Yes. Oh. Yes. And I was with a patient and I was doing like this icon procedure, this resin infiltration procedure. And I went in and I did like a full arch. So it was intense. It was like a 2-hour procedure. And I came out of my op and I was like, I smell burning plastic. And like someone tried to convince me that it was like the space heaters are new, so they give off this smell. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I went back into the operatory. I came out and it was like significant. So I started like sniffing around and it was the space heater had melted the plug into the wall. And I was like, this is how fires start. Yeah. And I've had multiple floods too. We have a recessed eye wash station because I hated the look of like a regular eye wash station. So I wanted the one that kind of folds down like a table.
Yeah.
So that pipe burst in the wall and I came into work one day and it was all just like water everywhere. My x-ray sensor broke last week. Like one of the screws snapped, like $13,000 later.
No big deal, right?
No, NBD. Yeah. Everyone like carries those things around like they're wrapping spaghetti around their wrist. And I'm like, there is a glass fiber optic inside of this thing.
But they're not paying for it, so they don't see that, right?
I see like my laser. I have like a Suro blue laser, $20,000 diode laser with the cords just like wrapped around it. Like we're tying red bows on Christmas presents. So we had a team meeting yesterday and I was like, okay, we need to take a beat and we need to like look at these things. I'm like, this camera that we have like a $3,000 Shofu iSpecial 3 dental digital camera because nobody wanted to use a DSLR. So I was like, fine, I'll come up with a solution where you point and shoot and you get a good photo. This thing fell on the floor in front of me. Like she was wiping something down and she just like smashed it and she was just like, oh. She like blew it off like it was like dust. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, like we need to have a team meeting. So we assembled the troops and I was like, all I see is dollar signs and small problems become big problems really fast if you don't say something. So disasters happen every day. iTrans was down a couple of days ago. I don't know if you knew it was down, but it was down. We couldn't send any claims through. Our internet was down.
I think that's the worst when the internet goes down because there's nothing that can be done. Yeah, because everything goes through the internet, right?
Right.
Oh man, I totally hear you. I had an assistant drop the iTero scanner, and you're like, boom, there goes 30K. Yeah,
30
minimum 30, man. Whoa. 13K. What version of iTero are you running?
Yeah, mine was like 60. Which one do you have? Mine's like the new
I guess mine's old.
Okay.
I don't have an iTero.
So we have a step in our office. So op 3 is up this one step.
Oh my God.
So every time we go up, two people have to lift it to go up this one step. It's just like a regular one step concrete step. But every time I see this iTero go up, it like my heart drops. I'm like, we need like a little seat belt for the device. Like, can we just put a little like Velcro around it or something? Yeah. And we recently bought a airflow, like an airflow prophylaxis master for GBT. That thing's broken twice. Like and we've only had it for 6 months. Yeah, it's super finicky.
Is that worth the investment?
Yes and no. It is a lot of headache, but we have gotten a lot of new patients from it. People like cool things, right? And I can say like I'm one of 5 offices in the city that has it. So yeah, it is
That's
worth
sweet.
it. But the problem is if you have multiple hygienists, they all want one.
Oh, I know.
So
That's
uh,
why I don't want to get one. I have 10
I know.
hygienists and man, I
I
feel like it's
monopolize
just
it
going
when
to be,
I'm
yeah,
in.
totally.
Yeah, it's like, but it is a really good feature for practice
Yeah.
if that's the vibe that you have.
I think like on this train, are you familiar with like that TikTok trend like icks? It's like usually couples
Oh
that do
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, what are your icks with like whether it's people that work with you, people that work for you? Because you have a really interesting
Oh,
perspective because you were in the position that you now hire for. So it's like,
right.
what you would have seen as an ick back then might not be an
Yeah.
ick now. So like, what are the true icks?
Okay, well, so there's some of them are super specific. So one of my biggest icks with clinical charting is when people use weird abbreviations, like just spell out the whole word. Like
Examples.
instead
Give
of
us some.
the word with, they'll just put a W. It's like just write
Oh,
with. It's
okay.
3
Okay.
I do
letters,
that. I do W.
right? Like W. So that irritates me. Um, when we do our perio charting, you do your like, your probing and then your recession. It bugs me when people don't actually put the 0, like 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0. They're just like blank, blank, 1. And then to me, it's like, did they miss those numbers or was that intentional? So that irritates me. Um, not having a system or a sequence. So I do everything exactly the same way. Every patient hygiene visit looks the same. I start on the upper right, I go to the left, I come back on the lingual. I do the same on the lower right, I go to the left, I come back on the lingual. I don't like bop around when I'm scaling. So it bugs me when people like start on the left side, then they go to the lower, and then they're like, there's no order. Maybe that's OCD. I don't know.
I think we all do that though. Like I take out teeth in an order, like when I do wisdom teeth all day, I
Maybe.
start on lower left and you work your way around the clock, right? Like
But not everyone does that.
I don't know why though, because it makes you feel comfortable. I find
Right.
that routine makes you feel like you're at home and it
Yeah.
keeps you confident with every case. And
Right.
that lack of, or that surprise throws you off your game. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Um, hmm. Squeezing patients in is a really big irritant for me. Um,
Why is that?
because I don't feel I can do my whole sequence. And then I
Mm,
omit something and it kind of irritates me. So it's like, well, what of these things do I put off until next time? Is it the recall or is it the x-rays or is it the probing? Because each one of those things are really important. And I feel like they should all be done at the same time together for the most comprehensive exam. So when someone like shows up 10 minutes late and their appointment is already 10 minutes shorter than it should be, I'm like, whoa, 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 comprehensive care. So that kind of bugs me. Luckily, I know the boss and she doesn't care if I like bring a patient back. Um, yeah, just disorder. People that don't wear scrub caps. I don't know why. Now that
really?
irritates
Why
me
is that? Why is that?
How are you
because
going to
I
fit this
know it's.
hair in a scrub cap? Are
I'll
you
send you
kidding me?
one.
Okay.
Jason wears my scrub caps. You've seen him
He
wear
has
my
some like
scrub
nice
caps.
slick back hair. It fits in. I
He
have
has
to
a
wear one of those
really
lunch
big
lady
head.
ones.
You should tell
That's
him
true.
that I said that.
Saw that
He's a
brain.
very big guy. He's got big features. Um,
Jason, if you're listening, we're sorry.
oh.
We're sorry, man. We love you.
I know. Yeah. I don't know. I think everyone's got their own stuff. Disorder is a big irritant for me, or like an unorganized operatory. It's just like shit all over the place. I can't handle it. Like, I also don't like cords. So my operatories don't have any cords that touch the ground. So
Oh.
everything is like the continental system where you kind of pull the little
Yeah.
lever down. And then all of our suction lines are like 2 inches off the ground. So like nothing is touching the floor. I chipped my front tooth on getting my foot caught in one of the like handpiece
Really?
cords and I face first into the ground. So I literally chipped my front tooth and I was like, this is it. When I open my own practice, nothing's touching the floor.
That's like my ultimate worst nightmare. Like that's like I wake up in the morning and I'm like checking my teeth that I chipped my teeth. I
Yeah.
couldn't even imagine. I would lose my mind if I chipped my
Yeah.
front tooth as a,
It
as
was a small
someone
chip,
even
but
dental field.
nonetheless very present.
Chip's a chip, man.
Yeah.
Hey, Irene, I got a question for you.
Sure.
there's a lot of dentists that are listening, a lot of newer dentists listen to this. And being a practice owner, like I said, I work with hygienists all day. I feel like most of them hate me, even though I love them so much and I try to be so pleasant and happy. But how can dentists effectively communicate with their hygienists to create strong teams? Like what is it that we need to do to create this unifying dental badassery?
I think it's education. So
Okay.
Irene 1.0 didn't know much about restorative. So I practiced most of my life. And I think back to those conversations that I had with my old bosses where perhaps I would miss something. It was a big filling and, they'd come in for the recall and did you see anything? And I would be like, no, I don't think I saw anything. And she's like, well, this is a huge filling. It's falling apart. It needs a crown. And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't see it. I didn't know what that was. So now when I think back to it as a restorative clinician, I can see these things really early. And sometimes I'm the one that brings it up because I use disclosing agent on every patient. So I do Optrogate disclosing agent, rinse it all off, intraoral camera of every restoration that's in the mouth. Start on the upper right, go all the way around. Anything that's dark purple or if there's a little gap, then I know it's either a deficient margin, something's breaking, micro leakage, I can see a cavo surface. Like these are words we're not taught in dental hygiene school. And these are words I didn't know until May of last year when I graduated restorative dental hygiene. So it's this lack of communication because we just don't know the same words and we're not present in those procedures. And I'd be surprised if there are many dental hygienists that weren't assistants before that have actually witnessed the beginning to end of a filling to understand
that's a good point.
Why would you prep with a rubber dam versus why wouldn't you prep with a rubber dam? And what's the difference between the white wedge and the orange wedge and the yellow wedge? When do you use a wedge versus when do you not use a wedge? What's a matrix? Like all of these words are just words that you would never know until you actually sit down to do this entire procedure. And then you realize, oh, okay, so there's a deficient margin here because it was actually a pretty deep sub restoration. And then when I cured it, my wedge moved and now I have a void. Like all of these little things that we just don't know. So I figured out something in the last little while. We do this thing at my office called the Tooth Life Study Club. So once a month, I have the Spear online education app. I don't know if you've used that app before. And there are modules and there's pathways. So pathways are really cool. It's like a series of videos that are all aligned under a specific topic. And each team member has their own login. And we assign these videos and they have to watch these videos and they have 1 month to do it. The expectation is that you're watching in the first 2 weeks and then you're implementing it in the last 2 weeks. And then when we have our study club, you talk about what you've learned. You tell me how you've applied it into your practice and perhaps you mention a case where you noticed this on. So it's interesting now our receptionists understand there's a prosto-perio series where they talk about referrals for recession. Like how early would you refer a patient out for a graft versus when would you do a class 5 restoration? And like, what's the difference between doing class 5 that's sub versus using like the 3 millimeter rule? So my assistant and my receptionist are now chatting about patients that they witnessed us doing this stuff on. And it's kind of cool because they would have not known that before. So the biggest gap in communication is knowledge, and we're all smart people, but we don't want to admit that we don't know stuff.
Oh, ego. The
I don't
killer,
even
the
consider
silent
it
killer.
ego. I just feel like, I don't want to admit that I don't know something that my boss knows. Like I want to impress my employer,
It's true.
but I'm only going to impress my employer with the skills that I know. And then we're butting heads, but it also goes the other way around. Like, no offense. Do you know how many dentists don't know how we probe? Or they pick up a probe and they're just like,
Every single one.
like bobbing it in there like it's Halloween and we're looking for apples. Like,
I feel like whenever I probe, everyone jumps. So I just, I give
too
you guys
much
all the
pressure.
credit.
You're breaking that like attachment. All of
That's
a sudden
their
there's
fault,
a
not
9
mine.
millimeter pocket. You're like, did you not notice this pocket? I'm like, what pocket?
That's why you
So-
freeze them first, Irene.
Yeah. So we use this phrase where we ask a question and then immediately we say it's okay to say no. So for example, like I mentioned earlier, I do resin infiltration. And sometimes if it's like an E1 lesion or even a D1 lesion, depending on the tooth, instead of prepping, we'll use resin. And it'll still look like a cavity. Like it'll still look like caries on the radiograph. It'll perpetually look like caries. So when we pull up the x-rays, the assistant's eyes go big because they're like, you did something on this tooth, but it still looks the same. And I'm like, do you know what resin infiltration looks like on an x-ray after it's been done? And then you pause and then you say, it's okay to say no. And then immediately like, oh no, I have no idea. It's like, okay, well, it will look exactly the same. So like, don't give the eyes. But that phrase is kind of helpful. Like, for example, if you were coming in to do a checkup and you notice this huge restoration and perhaps there's a craze line, and I don't know if you chase cracks or not, and you're like, yeah, I should take this out because it looks like it could potentially be a cuspal fracture. So I'm probably going to prep it for a crown. If you say to the hygienist, hey, did you notice this crack here? And do you know what might happen? And pause and then say, it's okay to say no. 100% of the time that clinician will say no. And then they won't feel like you're finding their fault versus teaching them a skill.
Hey, Kill, as a dental student.
I was just going to, I did not want to take it there.
Start asking questions.
Yeah. No,
did you understand anything I said? It's okay to say no.
I've been zoned out this whole podcast, really. But no, it's
just when you thought you were going to interview the Instagrammer, it turned out to be clinical. Damn.
Yeah, exactly. I want to take it there because I would be very upset with myself if I didn't ask you about your Instagram following, because obviously, you're big on Instagram. You have like 28,000 followers. And, I had a bit of a business idea that I wanted to sort of, propose to, some dentists and say, it's every dentist now is on Instagram and every single one is trying to self-manage. And it's hilarious because, the catch line was, are you done dancing for patients? Right? Because like all of them are on TikTok, all of them are dancing.
I don't dance. I don't know if you've noticed, but I don't dance.
No, you don't dance. But
no.
What's interesting though is a lot of people that I know that are actually big on Instagram, whether it's tattoo artists, dentists, lawyers, whoever, they say it doesn't really result in more patients, more clients, more revenue coming through the door. So what is your experience with that? And what is the right way to use these social media platforms as a practice owner?
Right. So I don't post very much on my office Instagram because our guidelines are actually pretty strict here in Ontario with who and how you can solicit. So let's say I do paid partnerships on Instagram for a specific company. Those paid partnerships have to be directly to dental professionals. I can't be like, hey, patients with gingivitis, now you need to use XYZ toothpaste. Like that goes against our marketing guidelines. So, and even on social media with saying you're an expert or you're proficient in something, that goes against guidelines too. So my direct to consumer on my office is non-existent. I'm kind of banking on patients that are coming to me are going to be either by referral because I do restorative, I do ortho, I do myofunctional therapy on kids. We do tongue ties and frenectomies and tongue training and whatever, thumb suck breaking, all of that stuff. I'm hoping that I'm getting patients by referral from other clinicians, even for perio. Like I get referrals from other hygienists that send me their patients because their office doesn't have the capabilities to do like biofilm testing or DNA testing. You're right. Like I don't get a lot of public patients because I don't cater to that on Instagram. So they probably don't see my stuff. But it does help you with SEO. So, if your name pops up a lot, people are mentioning you and you're getting mentioned on their stuff, the likelihood of someone saying, dental hygiene treatment or cleanings in Toronto or cleanings in the beaches, that is probably going to pop up my Tooth Life studio far greater than if I did none of it. So there is this like behind the scenes SEO kind of amplification that happens. So like, for example, I used to work for a holistic dentist before I left that practice to open mine. If you type in holistic dental hygiene, my name still pops up because I wrote like 10 blogs for her on her personal office website. And for some reason, those are searched a lot. So now that is connected to my practice because I'm no longer on her website, but the internet is still like, where's this holistic dental hygienist people were searching for so many times? And now they find my office. So there is a value if you are consistent.
What do you find is the best way to market towards patients? Like in your experience, is it just writing blog posts, or how do you get that?
I haven't done any paid ads, so I don't know. I see them pop up all the time. It's like $500 off your Invisalign cases, or free white. There's a dental office that opened up across the street from me, like 6 months after I opened. They took over this like teeny tiny coffee shop that had rodents, and they turned it into some dental office that had like the generic old guy with the dentures holding the apple ads, like film on the windows, just like a bunch of different, ick, exactly, big ick. And I sat there in tears. I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever going to happen to me. Like, they're going to take all of my new patients. And then like within a couple of months, the light bulbs out of their sign started to dim, and it didn't say dental office, it said null office, and they never fixed it. It was like, you could tell that it was that office. And if anything, they did me a favor because they took the $99 cleaning patients. Like, they posted in their windows that they do free whitening and a $99 cleaning. I do not know what a $99 cleaning is, nor would I ever like to know what a $99 cleaning looks like.
But it takes those patients out of your practice, and that's awesome.
They're gone.
Yeah.
And now I get the patients that are like, charge me what you'll charge me. You're above fee guide. Cool. That's great. I thought that was the worst thing that could happen, and it wasn't. So I don't know. I don't do any paid ads. Sure, you can find some offices that do. But for me, word of mouth. I mean, treat the people that are in your chair the best, and they will send other people just like them to you. Nice people usually send nice people, I've found.
True. Good karma. Good karma.
Yeah.
What was that point you were saying that you're not actually allowed to market to patients? I didn't quite get that.
So dental hygiene guidelines state that we're not allowed to promote a specific product or procedure to a non-dental professional. So I can't go out there and put together a YouTube video on the best whitening. Zoom whitening is the best whitening. This is the only whitening that you should ever use, dear patient, because that shows favoritism to a specific product, perhaps that I have an alliance with, and then that goes against marketing guidelines. So you can't actually do that. A lot of people do, and then they get in trouble for it. So yeah, there's some pretty interesting guidelines if you look through the actual marketing guidelines, they're called, as part of the CDHO, and the RCDSO has one too. So like, for example, the RCDSO has a bunch of stuff about naming. You can't name your practice brightest, whitest smile dental, or call yourself the most affordable dentist in the city, or specialist in removing nose hairs. Like, you can't say any of those things. You can't show that you are more superior than the person down the street that has the same DMD or DDS.
I immediately put my head down when you said the nose hair thing.
Like, we were all like, Irene, what are you saying?
I'll look right in the mirror after. Good Lord. It's so awesome. Interesting though, because like, the mecca, the golden goose of marketing when it comes to dentistry is bringing patients to the door, right? Like, yes, there's like the search engine optimization, there's the goodwill, there's networking within your community of practitioners, but at the end of the day, dentists really care. I would argue that 9 out of 10 dentists who start an Instagram page are doing it to bring in patients, right? So it's interesting. There's that nuance there where you can't actually market to patients. I don't know. Neki, what do you think?
I've yet to market to a patient, and I 100% agree with Irene. I'm not the least expensive dentist in my town, that's for sure. I'm completely non-assignment. I 100% agree with Irene that if you treat patients with respect and you do what's best for them, you treat them as if you're treating your father or I'm treating you a kill. I treat everyone the same way. And word of mouth has built my entire practice from the beginning 15 years ago. So I'm very lucky, and I 100% resonate. Like, I hear what you're saying, Irene, and you're totally right. I think we share a similar philosophy for sure.
It's like you don't see commercials about
Yeah.
Bentleys or Ferraris or Lamborghinis. You might see like an E-Class Mercedes ad during like a golf tournament or the Wimbledon, but you don't see their high level vehicles being advertised on like CP24 kind of
Yeah.
thing. So and that's okay for you to be that office, and it's also okay for you to be the $99 office if that's what you want. I mean, it's all about setting expectations and standards for yourself. Of course, the goal is that we're all meeting those high level of standards across the board. um, but not everyone is going to be you. I had a patient walk out on me last week because she didn't want me to take her blood pressure. We take blood pressure on every patient.
Mhm.
It was her first time in the office. She was a new patient, and comprehensive visit. The first thing we do is review medical history and take blood pressure. So she reviewed and she said, I've never had my blood pressure taken in a practice before, in an office before. I've been seeing the same dentist for 25 years. Why are you taking my blood pressure now? And she was very upset with me. And I tried to explain it to her. I have a little laminated sheet. I pull it out. I say, our guidelines state this. It's really important. And she's taking a slew of medications. So she said, I'm not staying here. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to my other practice. Probably for the best,
Yeah. Peace out.
because I'm not going to be able to meet your needs or your expectations of the type of dentistry that you're looking for. And on her like intake forms, the concern was that teeth were breaking. So that just tells me that perhaps the practice that she was in was kind of carpentry, just slapping a little bit of plaster in to keep things in place, not really looking at things kind of comprehensively and over the big picture. And there was a really great video we watched on Spear where Dr. Frank Spear will print off an occlusal photo of the patient at their new patient exam. So they take a series of photos, and then he takes one of those clicky pens with the red, the green, and the blue and the black, and he'll physically circle the restorations on there in different colors based on when they'll need to be replaced in that patient's lifetime. So you might have an old crown that's, there's some recession around it. You see that little black margin, but it fits fine and it looks fine and the contacts are good. That might get a number 2 around it, meaning that in your lifetime, at some point that'll need to get placed. Or there's a lot of red. Those are going to have to be replaced first. And that we've adopted in our practice so that when patients come in, they know that the dentistry in your mouth isn't just going to live there forever. There will be a time where it needs to be replaced. And we're going to do them in the right way so that we want to fix things the day before they break. This lady didn't have that luxury. Everything was breaking for her all the time. There was constantly a fire that was being put out. And her perception of dentistry is that we're here to fix broken. But our level of dentistry is we fix before things break. And she's just not the right human for us. And maybe one day she will be. Maybe she'll come back, like the patient I had a couple of weeks ago that went to a different practice because she moved and then showed back up and said, I'm really sorry. I left, but now I'm
Yeah. I
back.
see that a lot too. Yeah.
She said, I
Yeah.
went to this office in Scarborough and it wasn't what I expected. And I'm back. I had a cleaning there, but I don't know how good it was. They were really fast. Will you take me back? And I'm like, open arms, baby girl. Like, now she's here for life.
Standing your ground. I love it. Well, Irene, I don't know where the past hour went. It has been
been an
great
hour?
it's been an hour.
Check my invisible watch.
It's been, yeah, exactly. It just looks sophisticated. It's been great getting to know you and hearing your story. And I'm glad we got to, know Irene's icks. That was, I think that was the first of the pod. But where can people get in touch with you?
Instagram, or better yet, just go to Google and search my name and then click all of the links that pop up. Help me with my SEO. Tooth Life Irene, Tooth Life Irene on Instagram is perfect.
Awesome. You heard it here first. So go reach out, go show her new practice some love. If there's any weird patients that are listening to a dental podcast. I don't know why that would be the case, but yeah, it was such a pleasure having you on.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Irene.
Thanks for having me. I need to have you guys on my podcast now. We need to do a 2-for-1.
Oh,
That
for
sounds
sure. We'll
fun.
do a swap.
What's the name of your podcast? You might as well tell the world you're here.
Oh, Tooth or Dare podcast.
Ooh, Tooth or
Yeah.
That's a
Dare.
great. You're good with the name
Tooth or
plays,
Dare.
eh?
I mean, hey, you do
Tooth
what you
or
got to
Dare.
do. Tooth or Dare.
Me and
Mm.
myself and Irene. That should have been it.
I say you do a rebrand. I like that.
Yeah. Thank
Exactly.
you. All right, everyone. Peace out, peeps.
Thank you, Irene. A kill. We had Irene on the show. I loved her perspective. I can't believe, I didn't even know that was possible. A hygienist running a dental practice and dentists are working, well, contractually contractors or whatever, chair renters from her. That's absolutely amazing. I didn't even know that existed. Have you ever heard of this model before?
Never. It's wild. I think it's so cool. It's like, it's exactly what I would have expected of someone like Irene to do. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, you know, you see someone like that, super entrepreneurial, has a podcast, has a ton of Instagram following, super vocal. And I'm like, you know, before the episode started, you know, we're researching her. I'm like, does she own this practice? Like she's dentist working under her? That's awesome. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
I think that's awesome. And I didn't know like the steps she went through. I think it's super unfair. You know, as a dentist, we walk into the bank 100%. They don't even ask a question. No matter how much debt you have, here's 100% financing on your office. And then she walks in with a better business plan than a lot of dentists have. And then, you know, you have to pay 15% up front. And that's tough, especially in the dental field when everything costs so much. And to build a practice is $1 million plus. And to walk in needing 15% is, I think, would be such a barrier for, you know, anyone in the field to get their, you know, feet wet in dentistry.
Yeah. Yeah. It sucks. It's like a double standard for sure. I don't know if I use double standard right. Is that a double standard?
Yeah, I guess that would be a double standard. I don't know, but like there's no other hygienists that are asking for that.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
sort of ridiculous. And on top of that, it's like, you know, I asked her that question about being an entrepreneur and like, I never really thought of it from that perspective, but hygiene, you know, when we look at practices at Sage, like hygiene is such a crucial part
Absolutely.
to what your practice is worth, because that's the SaaS part of your business, right? Like that's the subscription part of your business that,
Yeah.
you know, people are coming back for. It's like, yeah, you're not always going to get like the same cavity every time from the same patient, but you know, your patients are coming back for hygiene. And like looking at it from that angle and thinking how many hygienists are actually entrepreneurial and see the value in what they're bringing to the table. I think more hygienists should be encouraged to go down this path of, you know, I don't know if it's practice ownership, but at least being an entrepreneur, because they have that gene, you know?
Oh, absolutely. The current model obviously has worked for many years, but like all things, there's always time for disruption in every industry. And I think we just met the disruptor. So
I love it.
you know, good for Irene. I think that's amazing. And for me, it was an honor to meet her because of just, you know, hearing how she did that. I think that was super cool. And I don't know how many other Irenes are going to be able to go down that path, but that's awesome, Irene. And I congratulate you for it.
Yeah, it's super cool. Well, guys and girls, enjoy the episode. We had a blast recording it.
See you soon.